Hi, I'm Raylyn Worcester, and this is Spreading the Word. That's word with a capital W, as in the written word, the Bible, and the Word made flesh, Jesus Christ. Today I'm reading to you from the bigger picture. This is the collaboration that my brother and I worked on together, where we take a look at our world today and discover how it got to the point it's at and where it's going from here and what can be done about it. We had already looked at the main weapon the enemy uses, which is usury, and found out what it is and how it's become so pervasive in our society. And then we shifted our focus now to a specific dot on the map, the United States of America. And we're taking a look at how things happen in our country to get to where we are and where we are going. We looked at how the lifespan of a nation can be broken into cycles that seem to repeat themselves and give us a clue as to what's coming up. And so now we are going to pick up in article number 10, which is number 2 of Here and Now. And this one is called Indoctrination, the Takeover of Our Children. And you know it's true, so you're going to want to listen. The common thread running through the articles of the bigger picture is that of usury, an evil warned against in the Bible, in which man is deliberately drawn away by his own basic animal instincts in order to be taken advantage of for the benefit of another. Usury manifests itself in many ways, one of them being indoctrination. Indoctrination is the act of teaching people to fully accept beliefs and ideals without questioning them. This is happening in the United States today. It is happening to our children. When our nation began, parents were responsible for instructing their children. All children were home taught. Their textbook was the Bible. The children learned to read and write, and they learned to live moral, responsible lives. There was no government involvement in education. Then, in 1642, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts passed a law that each household must ensure that its members could read and understand principles of religion and the law of the Commonwealth. This law was not met with resistance, as this is what the people were doing anyway. They just added a little civics to their lessons, but it opened the door for government-mandated education. By 1647, the government in Massachusetts had decided that parents weren't capable of adequately teaching their children and passed a law, appropriately called the Old Deluder Satan Act. I'm not making this up. That required towns of 50 families to hire a schoolmaster to teach the children to read and write, and towns of 100 families to hire a grammar school master who could prepare children to attend Harvard College. Again, this was not met with much opposition, as parents, motivated by sloth and greed, found it much easier to let someone else teach their children so they could devote their attention to making a living. In 1685, the Bible was replaced as the primary textbook by the New England Primer. Parents no longer taught their children and no longer controlled what they were being taught. The big push for government education came by way of Horace Mann in 1837. He advocated free public schools as a way to civilize children morally and socially. Notice that the focus was no longer on reading and understanding laws, it was on being morally and socially acceptable. Yeah, back in 1837. It is also interesting to note that the word civilize means to enlighten, socialize, cultivate, and humanize. And here we see the indoctrination agenda materializing. Why was the government interested in the education of children? To socialize and cultivate them into a product that could be used to their advantage. But most people were too distracted to see it. By 1900, parents were considered unfit guardians. Children were being forced into school, and children were considered the property of the state. That is a quote by Andrew J. Coulson. By 1918, 2/3 of the nation's children were enrolled in public schools, and attendance was compulsory. This was all being done on the state level until 1958. That's when the federal government got involved with the National Defense Education Act, which provided federal funding for the right to say what was being taught in public schools and how. In a Supreme Court ruling in the case of Engel versus Vitale in 1962, prayer was removed from schools, and Bibles were banned from classrooms in 1963. Fast forward to today. The federal government has laid all the necessary groundwork to begin indoctrinating the children of the nation. They paid for the right to teach them whatever they wanted and remove all obstacles that would oppose what they chose to teach. Now it was time to introduce the curriculum that would achieve their goals. That curriculum was President Obama's Common Core initiative. The initiative is described as rigorous standards in English language arts, ELA, and mathematics, and promises that every child will be career and college ready by the end of high school. These standards also define the content that should be taught at each grade level, from kindergarten through 12th grade. Though the initiative received no public debate in its inception, and 1/6 of the Common Core Validation Committee did not approve the core standards, the initiative was pushed through and made law before most people had even heard of it. In 2010, while the nation was still struggling with the effects of the economic turndown in 2008, President Obama introduced the Race to the Top competition. This plan would give $4.35 billion to the states whose schools would adopt the Common Core curriculum, and they were only given 2 weeks to sign and return the agreement forms. 43 states signed and returned the forms without fully examining them so they could receive their share of the funds. Just like that, the curriculum found its way into the majority of our nation's schools and is being implemented today. So what's so bad about Common Core? 2 things: what it is teaching our children and the reason it is being taught. Let's take a look at the latter first. In 1992, the president of the National Education Department, Mark Tucker, wrote a 17-page letter to Hillary Clinton, which stated that the goal of his department was to, and I quote, transform American education to become like the German education system, which focuses on workforce development. It also said that, and I quote, the government needs to micromanage every citizen's life, cradle to grave, using schooling as the core of the centralized control. That's where we get the name Common Core education. In a 2013 National Center for Education and the Economy report, Tucker also admitted that his goal for education reform was not to raise but to lower standards. Why? To dumb the people down so they are easier to control. Those behind the Common Core curriculum regard education as a production line in which they are going to take little human beings and make them college or career ready. Current policymakers see the purpose of education as being the training of people to acquire the minimum skills that are required to work in a technical workplace. All individuality is erased. There is no room to discover one's interests, talents, and passions. Our children are being groomed, not to become all that they can be, but to become all our government wants them to be, for their purpose, under their control. As nefarious as the plot behind Common Core is, even more so is the curriculum itself. What are our children actually being taught with Common Core? One grammar worksheet contained the following exercise. Make each sentence less wordy by replacing the underlined words with a possessive noun phrase. Number 1, the wants of an individual are less important than the well-being of his nation. Number 2, the commands of government officials must be obeyed by all. The true focus of the exercise is not on the grammar at all, but on the indoctrination of nationalism or being loyal to one's government. In one history book, the United States is represented as a racist nation. It plainly states that any white person who disagrees with President Obama is racist because the president is black and that white people would not willingly vote for a black president. This is what our children are being taught. The only difference between Common Core and the education the Hitler Youth received is that theirs was out in the open and ours is presented as something totally innocent and for the betterment of our children. Which is more dangerous? It's time we, as a nation, as parents and grandparents, take back our children. We need to become more involved in their lives and their education, not given the responsibility to others with their own agendas. Homeschooling and parochial schools are still options. Take advantage of them while you are still able. Encourage free thinking, the arts, sports, individuality, and the expression of God-given gifts and talents. Encourage prayer, Bible reading, and spiritual growth. Our government has a plan for the lives of our children. We need to have a better one. Wow. Did any of that ring true to you? It should. It's rampant. And we blindly turn our face from it because we don't want to deal with it, or we fool ourselves into thinking, oh, it's not that bad. Oh, but just wait. It gets worse. you're going to want to join me for our next article called Higher Education. Please remember to share the bigger picture with those around you. They live in this world too, and they deserve to know. Also, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, and in this way, you can help spread the word. Thank you. God bless.